Today on Inspired Money.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing about copywriting. So I want to back it up a little now that you told me that. So if somebody's like in a corporate job and they think, oh, I don't really need to do copywriting because I'm not trying to sell my service online. The truth is you are selling everyone around you. So every time you send a text message convincing, your significant other to do something, copywriting skills help with that.
This is episode 76 with copy conversion expert Sarah Grear. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker, welcome back. If it's your first time listening, welcome. While driving home from work today, I was thinking about why I love Inspired Money. I believe that we can all do better with our money, of course. We can aspire to do better, we can help each other, but it's more than just that. I learned so much from our guests, and it's about what we can do with our money. It's a tool that can help us to live richer lives, make a greater impact, and together, we can make the world a better place. Thank you for joining me on this mission. Today, we're talking with Sarah Grear. She's a copy conversion expert who believes that you can change the world one word at a time. What does that mean exactly? She's written the words that you'll find on websites or social media promoted content, and her high-earning copy is centered on amplifying sales. She's written copy for more than 300 projects and worked with some big-name online entrepreneurs like Amber McHugh, Hilary Rushford, and Rick Mulready. So I met Sarah last year over 2 days at Darren Rouse's Pro Blogger event that included a mastermind and presentations for entrepreneurs. I really loved her feedback and her presentation, so I wanted to invite her on to share with you. In this episode, you'll learn, just like Ryan Serhant says that we're all in sales, Sarah says that we're all copywriters, meaning that we can all learn to write better with purpose and with an ability to convince people. She'll give us a framework for how to use words for persuasion to sell products and services. And we'll talk about some cool stuff, like how she took 4 months off in 2017, and yet her revenue doubled. So let's get inspired with Sarah Grear. Sarah, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Andy. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
Oh my goodness. So I remember when I was a kid and I was in elementary school, my earliest memory was going to the cafeteria and they had like this little snack bar in there. And we would trade our money for they had like this Monopoly type money. And I would trade it and I would be able to use the Monopoly money to buy food at the snack bar. And that's my earliest memory of trading money for food.
I love that it's food related.
I'm a sucker for eating. What can I say?
So you're known as a copywriter. But before we define what that means, before we get into that, can you tell me about your unique path to where you are today? Because I know that you did not start as a marketer.
Yeah, so I actually started working as an art installer in museums. So I went to art school. I got my degree in ceramics. And when I was at that school, I realized there's a lot of different ways to express myself creatively. So I was doing a few different things. I was working in ceramics. I was also blowing glass. They had a glass blowing class, which was really fun. I was painting, I was drawing, I was doing really any tool I could get my hands on. And there was one class that caught my eye. It was called Exhibition and Design. And what that meant is we worked in the gallery on campus and we were installing art for different artists. The department was well funded, so we could actually bring in artists from all over the world. and they would install their shows at the museum right there on campus. I decided, as I started to learn the trade of installing art, I decided it's something I wanted to try. And LA has no shortage of museums. We have LACMA, MoCA, Hammer. I mean, the list goes on. And I worked for all of them, and I was installing art for all of them. And it was an incredible journey getting to meet all these other artists, given that I had a degree in the arts. And it was a really fun journey for me. I really enjoyed working for these different museums. I had, some experiences that weren't great, and that was more with how the museums were ran. But getting to be a part of the art world was really exciting and fun for me.
So was it that class that changed your path? Because I understand at one point you had aspirations to become a street artist.
Yeah. So I think that class really made me realize, there's a way to have a career as an artist where you can remain entrenched in the art world and not have to give up your passion of making your work as well. Because I definitely sold my ceramic work. And along the way, I found this street artist. I don't know if you've heard of him. His name is Banksy.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I was really in love with what he was doing, and also had lots of friends growing up in Las Vegas who liked to spray paint graffiti and stuff. So I had these, the furthest I ever got with it was spray painting in my mom's backyard. But I had this romantic idea of, yes, being a street artist. But in terms of making money doing that, it's not necessarily a career that I feel like will always result in what Banksy has done. And here's the funny thing. They sell his art on these huge markets like Sotheby's, but he has no desire for his work to be sold, and people are basically taking his work and ripping it off. So I feel like being a street artist is not the best career choice. I think he must be a trust fund kid or something, because I don't know how he does it otherwise.
Yeah, his latest thing in the news was pretty crazy. That multi-million-dollar painting that was sold, and then the shredder that was built into the frame.
Yeah, he had installed a shredder secretly, and as soon as they auctioned it off, he shred the thing, and it was amazing. It was amazing to watch it, but honestly, I wonder, does that really take away from the value of the art? Because in my mind, it might be worth more now because it got so much press.
Correct. Yeah. It became part of the art piece.
Totally. Yeah, totally. It's wild. I love him.
So, I've heard the story before, but your path, following your passion, working in museums, it was something that you were really enjoying. And it sounds like something that you're very good at, you were doing really well. Can you talk about what happened and why did you end up leaving that world?
Yeah, so there's a saying that I love. It's pain pushes and vision pulls. So for me, I was definitely pulled in by this vision of, okay, I want a career in the arts. This is one avenue for me. And I really love the whole behind the scenes of it and getting to be so intimate with all this art. But the part of it that I realized over time was that it's a very male-dominated industry. And I was injured on the job. And when that happened, I was actually on disability leave. And what happened was I was working for the California Science Center, which is 175,000 square feet building, which is twice the size of the White House. So I was walking on these concrete floors, and it was really hurting my body. And so I took a little bit of leave, and while I was on leave, I kind of realized this is something that I want to keep doing, but if it's going to be painful for me, maybe I should stop. But the other thing was I had an experience at a previous museum that will remain unnamed, where I was actually walking down the hallway at this prestigious museum, and out of earshot, I could hear one of my old department heads, and he was saying, as I was walking towards him, he turned to a friend and said, "I will never hire a woman." And I had just applied to work full time at that museum, but clearly I was not going to get the job because he had already decided that he was not interested in hiring me based on my gender. So that was really difficult for me to go through, and then compounded with the fact that I was working at a different museum and had injured myself, that I just realized like that's when I needed to quit. And they were actually calling me back, the California Science Center. I was on leave and they had a really big project coming up, which was the Endeavour shuttle was being flown from Florida to Los Angeles. And it was this huge parade. And so they really needed all hands on deck. And I just looked back at the past of my career and decided it was time for me to quit and move on. And that's how I landed. Well, the short version is I went from doing the museum work to becoming a writer. But there were lots of little steps in between that happened to get there.
Yes, we all know about gender pay gap, and you see statistics like time and time again. It's a very consistent problem. But to hear your potential boss saying that he would never hire a woman, that's just got to be brutal.
It was really intense, and I had to take it for what it was, and I decided not to. This was, a decade ago. So this was a time when it wasn't in the news all the time that women were standing up for their rights and what was, what should be done, what the right thing to do, but at the time I just decided there's plenty of museums in LA. I'll go work for a different one. But yeah, now I hope that women feel like they can really stand up and find allies where they're working in other men and be able to communicate what happened to them. The bright side of the story is a decade later, that department head has retired and was replaced by a woman that's a dear friend of mine. And I was able to tell her everything that happened. So now she's there working at that museum. And so I guess there's a happy ending to that story.
Yeah, that's great. That is a happy ending for the institution. So what was the process for you after you left? Did you have to go through like a soul-searching sort of process to figure out what you wanted to do next, since you were making a shift into a different line of work, right?
Yeah, so it was what seemed like a big leap for me, but I honestly had already kind of been testing the waters in the background. While I was working at the museums, I would have these big gaps in between installations, and so I would travel quite a bit. And so I had already started dabbling in travel blogging. So I was writing stories online, and that's what really got me excited about the whole online storytelling piece. So I had a little bit of experience. And to me, writing is just like another creative tool. So if I'm working with clay, if I'm working with glass, if I'm working with paint or words, to me, it's all creative tools. So I landed on writing these stories and was really enjoying doing the travel blogging. And then I started doing some local journalism here in my city. And that got me another taste of, okay, like what's it like to sit down with somebody and get their story and interview them and then share that story. I was doing it a little bit online for the local journalism, but I was also doing some print work as well. So it was really satisfying, actually, to interview these people and then see the story in print, that next month. And also getting to know the stories of my local business owners. That's what I realized is stories are just as interesting if you go down the block as they are if you go across the world. So that was kind of my way of dabbling in it and seeing, okay, do I like this? And then the whole copywriting and marketing, the online marketing piece, I found a book by Peter Bowerman called The Well-Fed Writer, and it's all about starting a business around writing websites for business owners. And I really fell in love with it. I was like, oh, so I can tell people stories and basically have like a global brand where my clients are all over the world. I've had clients as far as Ghana, Africa, all over Australia, the UK, Canada, and it's all ran from my office here in my home in Los Angeles. So that was really appealing to me. It kind of like pulled me in like, oh, this is so fun. I can tell people stories from all walks of life and help them sell more of their service or product online. And so that's when I fell in love with copywriting. I was like, okay, this is what I want to do next. So right as I was quitting the museum, I had already taken on a few copywriting clients. And so I just decided I'm going to dive in headfirst. Let's do this. This is my business now.
Oh, that's really cool. So it was a gradual move in that you had some copywriting clients. It's like you take some small steps before taking the leap.
Yeah, I did. And because I was on leave, it gave me the flexibility to do that. And I was really thinking about my own personal health as well. Like, okay, I don't want to do a job that's going to hurt my body anymore. So that's where I went next. And so I really love, running my business from a computer and just meeting people over video. And it's super fun for me.
How long ago was that? Was that 5 or 6 years ago?
Yeah, it's been 6 years, going on 7.
Well, I don't know what the path of like previous years are, but 2017 sounds like a pretty big one for you. Or maybe it was late 2016. You had some big speaking engagements. You've had really big things happening in your business.
Yeah, I hit a tipping point late 2016. So I started the copywriting business officially in 2012. And for 4 years, actually, I would say for the first 2 years of my business, I was really figuring out who I wanted to work with.
For our listener, can you define what copywriting is? Because I imagine that if you go to a cocktail party and you tell someone you're a copywriter, they don't really know what that means.
Yeah, totally. So copywriting is really simple. What it is the words that go on your website. If you are looking to write your home page, your about page, your services page, any of that, a copywriter will help you with that. And so the first couple years of my business, I really focused on the home, about, the work with me pages because people were struggling with the words they were going to tell on their website. The thing that I heard the most the first couple years of my business was that they knew they had a story to tell. They weren't sure how to do it, or which story was important for them to tell to sell more of their service or products. So really copywriting is using storytelling to get people to take some kind of action on your website. So that's what I did for the first couple of years, looked at that historical data, realized that I loved working with healers and creatives and used that to go forward. Fast forward, 3 or so years, I was starting to work with more course creators, people who were launching products online. A lot of the times they were running ads. So when you're, scrolling through your feed and you see a Facebook ad from someone, like a sponsored ad, I actually write that copy for them so that they can get the most people on their list. And then they'll take people from that list to offering them some kind of online product. And in 2016, what you were referencing, I actually was working with Mulready. He was getting ready to launch a digital marketing program where he was teaching people how to create their own Facebook ads. And he wanted me to do his sales page, so I did it. And here's the thing I wasn't even thinking about that I love is that I would show up to our meetings. A lot of copywriters like to hide behind their screen. They don't like getting on video. So I would show up on video, I would have candles and flowers in the background, like make it a whole experience. And we would do live edits in the Google Doc, and we were writing his sales page to offer his program. And after we finished our project, I guess he just noticed that I like being on camera and I like speaking. And so he invited me on his stage, and it was pretty cool. I said yes. So I was like, okay, I'll come to San Diego. I'll teach copywriting to your audience. All these people are looking to, create better Facebook ads and better sales pages and just do really well with their launch emails. And when I got on his stage, what I realized is it wasn't just me. It was me, Mulready, Pat Flynn, Amy Porterfield, James Wedmore, like all these very well-known marketers that people really like, almost to the point of people worshiping them. They love them so much. And it was Sarah Grear. Ta-da!
It's crazy that you didn't know until you showed up.
Okay, so I saw it on the website like right before I went. I was like, oh, I'm not the only person speaking. Look at this lineup. oh my goodness, I know all of these marketers and they're doing amazing things. So yeah, I knew a little bit before I got there, and I didn't know when I said yes though. And so I was really grateful for that opportunity to speak on that stage. And that kind of snowballed my business into just doing more and more speaking, being seen more and more as an authority in my copywriting business. And so that really, I feel like that was a really nice tipping point where I started getting more and more business. It was just a different experience in the first few years. So for anybody who's got a business and they want to help propel it forward to the next stage, I would say speaking is amazing. Go for it.
Tell me the power of changing the words on your website.
Yeah, so I feel like when people are going to launch something in particular, you really, the gap that I see the most people are missing is that they are getting ready to, let's say, launch a lead magnet, and they want people to opt into their lead magnet and get on their email list. So they go to do that and they put what they think people want to hear. So for example, let's say I just did a lead magnet recently about tripling your email open rates. So when I went to do that, I really listened to people and the words that they were using, and then I put that in my copy so that when somebody goes to download something or get your offer that you have, using the exact words that other people are using makes all the difference. So if I had just put, get higher open rates and put that on the lead magnet, that wouldn't necessarily be a tangible enough result for them. But if I say triple email open rates, now their brain starts to do the math. Okay, my open rate is at, let's say, 15%. If I can get it to 45% by downloading this free thing, I'm all in. So I think that's one distinction people need to do, is get a little more specific and start to use psychological things that will get people's mind working around the solution that you're going to give them. And then when I went to launch the upsell offer, so there was the lead magnet, triple your email open rates, and then I sent a series of emails to them saying, okay, here's the next thing that you need for your business. Right as I was launching that lead magnet, I was watching every name come in that was downloading it. I was researching people a little bit to see what were they doing in their business. And I happened to have a few, I wasn't really planning it, but I noticed some people who had downloaded the lead magnet were going to talk to me that week. We were going to get on Zoom and talk about a project or whatever it may be. And the thing they kept saying to me is, oh, I'm most excited that there's templates and I need more templates for my business. So I gave them 3 script templates they could use to triple their email open rate. And I could tell they wanted more. So I thought about, okay, what's the next thing I can give them? I can give them a sales page template because they need to write a sales page because they're going to, after they triple their email open rates, they're going to want to make an offer to their list. So I think making sure that you actually have conversations with people and weave that language into your offer makes a huge difference. And then there is a framework for making an offer as well. Would it be helpful for me to kind of walk through that framework?
Yeah, I think so. As you do that, are you speaking to my listeners who are either a business owner or involved in marketing or have some kind of solo practice or business where they're trying to drive leads?
Yeah, so I think it can be one or both. If you are looking to, let's say you are somebody who's looking to make an offer and you have a one-to-one service, is that some of your audience has that? Is that accurate?
Well, I think the listenership can be broad. There are those who are working at a startup. So what you're talking about could apply to what they're doing. There could be someone who has their own business, but then there are other listeners that, they might be working a corporate job, and I don't know if it applies or to what extent. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing about copywriting. So I want to back it up a little now that you told me that. So if somebody's like in a corporate job and they think, oh, I don't really need to do copywriting because I'm not trying to sell my service online. The truth is you are selling everyone around you. So every time you send a text message convincing, your significant other to do something, copywriting skills help with that. You can totally use it for that. If you are sending a message to your kid's school and you're wanting to get them excited about, adding some kind of program to their curriculum, all those things, people don't realize you're a copywriter. You're not thinking about it, but you're using persuasion techniques to get people's attention and to get them to take some kind of action. So if you boil it down, you can use it pretty much in any area of your life.
Coming up, Sarah talks about how to write to get people's attention and for getting them to take action, why taking time off helps creativity, and her larger mission in helping people grow their online businesses. But first, if you're in business, good copywriting is essential.
In terms of the people who do have businesses or are running a startup, copy, I think, is an essential cornerstone to your business in terms of you're going to have some kind of list that you're talking to, whether it be getting investors to come into your business or you're getting actual consumers who are, consuming your product.
The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/076. If you're listening in your car or wherever you are, check the show notes if you want to learn more about Sarah or things mentioned in this episode. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Have you been watching Tidying Up with Marie Kondo on Netflix? It's the wave that's sweeping the nation. Back in 2015, I read Marie Kondo's book and wrote a blog article entitled The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up Your Investment Portfolio, Part 1. The KonMari method is the simple approach where you go through your belongings by holding items up, then keeping items that spark joy, and getting rid of those that don't. When we do this, inevitably, we fill garbage bags full of unnecessary papers, old clothes that we haven't worn in years, or maybe you've never worn them, and the result is a neater desk, home, and garage. So it got me wondering, can I KonMari my investment portfolio? I think you can. Many portfolios are made up of 8 to 12 mutual funds or exchange-traded funds. According to the American Association of Individual Investors, 8 mutual funds, that's 5 equity funds, 2 bond funds, and a money market fund, is enough. In other words, it can be optimal to make an organized, understandable, appropriate, and efficient portfolio. Sounds like a winner, right? But sometimes those funds actually own thousands of stocks and bonds. So once you add them together, you might own 8,000 stocks and 20,000 bonds. I can see Marie's face now. If only she could fold your statements so that they could stand up on their own. Seriously though, that many stocks and bonds has got to leave a lot of room for discarding issues that do not speak to your heart. Take a look at your portfolio. I think decluttering is a good thing even for your investments. Get out of old issues that are not working or serving your long-term goals. Just like your closet, odds are that you can Marie Kondo your 401k or other investment portfolios. Give it a try and let me know how you do. That's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. So what's your biggest financial challenge right now? Should you contribute to a pre-tax 401k or Roth 401k? How much should you contribute? We can help. Go to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy. That's inspiredmoney.fm/Andy. And email me using the webpage form. I'd love to hear from you, and we can even schedule a short call. You're listening to Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong.
There's definitely a framework to how you get people's attention and how you get them to take that action that you want them to take. And one of the most powerful frameworks you can use is storytelling. So, and this is something that it's how Andy and I met. We met at this conference and I was talking about how you go from storytelling to story selling. And the framework is using story, emotion, and action. So once you hook somebody in with a story that you tell, and you want to tell a story that's relevant to the person you're talking to. So if Andy and I were hanging out and we were swapping stories, I would pick a topic that's interesting to him so that I would know he would listen. So you want to think about it the same way. And it's that example I just gave about the lead magnet. I'm only going to tell stories about templates and how I use templates in my business, because I know that's what the consumer wants more of. So I'll break down to the very nitty gritty of like, how do I actually use a template as a copywriter? Because they want to become the copywriter themselves. So I think that's the first piece, is the storytelling. And then using emotion, right? Like, I think people overlook this piece, but it's kind of when you're watching a movie and you want to get people interested in the plot and the character, there's always a big emotional tipping point in the story where you're invested in what's happening to that person. And I actually just did that a little bit earlier with the story I told about the museum and how I quit my job. That's my emotional tipping point, or the part that makes you feel like you're right alongside me in the story. And then getting somebody to take an action, that part is the fun part for me. So when you get to the action part, it's, download my lead magnet or sign up for my webinar or whatever it is. You always want to, at the end of your story, after you've given them the emotion, ask them to take some kind of action with you. And if you've done this story, emotion, action framework right, then people will feel like they're the hero right alongside you throughout the story, so that they can feel like, oh, whatever transformation she had, it's possible for me too. That's the framework that I use whenever we're working on anything. And you can see the thread of it regardless of where the customer is experiencing the story. So if it's at the very beginning where they're just getting a free training, or they're getting to the point where you're offering them your paid product, at every turn point, you want to include the story, emotion, and action that they can take.
So it seems like a framework that can carry like quite a bit of power, and that hopefully people are using it for good, not for evil, right? Because you could be using it for like, if you were like a bad person, you could actually be using it to like influence people in a negative way.
Yeah, well, I mean, cults use the same thing. There's copywriters who have gone in and like dissected how these cults are so successful. They're using the same persuasion techniques. It's pretty crazy. But yes, use your forces and everything for good. Don't use it for evil.
No, I love that. I love that. You're totally right. I mean, I think that all of us see that in the TV shows that we watch, the movies that we see. It's that the importance of story, but the emotional component is what really gives it a lot of power.
Yeah. And, when you're sharing the emotion in your story, I do tell people, wait to share it until you've processed the emotions from it, because you don't want to be that person who's like pushing your story on people. You're going through all this pain, and then there's no like triumph in the end. You want to take people to a place where, if you're going to take them to that emotional place where you're processing something that's very vulnerable, at the end of it, you want to tell them, okay, this is how I got to the other side of it. Because in the end, you want people to buy, not cry. That's my rule of thumb.
I love it. It's really interesting how you made the shift from the museum world into running your own business. Is that something that was difficult for you? Because in the course of 5 years, it seems like you've experienced great growth, right? Year over year, and you've been growing your brand and growing your business. What kind of challenges have you had as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so the thing that definitely got me because there were definitely, to me, there's like the big growth, and then there's times where you make mistakes, and there's times where you think you're making the right decision in your business and it doesn't turn out the way you think it will. So for me, one of the biggest mistakes that I look back on, or I wouldn't even call it a mistake, the biggest lessons I got from my business was in 2015 when I had been running my business a few years. I had great private client work, steady flowing in. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to take this copywriting business and I'm going to scale it. And I want to do that by starting an online course. And in 2015, I decided that I wanted to make this course, the price of it be $997, because I saw so many of my peers doing that. And I thought it was the right next step for my business. But what I didn't realize is that when I put so much of my focus and attention on developing a course and having it be a high-priced course when I didn't really have a lot of brand recognition yet, like people didn't necessarily know who I was or that I was an expert in my field, when I went to launch that course, I maybe sold, I think, 2 seats in the main course. And then I did a smaller offering right after that. I think it was for like another, $300 right after. And I sold maybe 5 of those. So my expectations, and this is the part that's tricky, my expectations were super high. I thought I was going to sell like $20,000 worth of seats in my course. That's 20 people. I thought it was totally doable. But then I landed at 2. And that was a big blow. Like, that was really hard for me to understand. And on top of that, and here's the part where the lesson came in, not only had I invested a bunch of time into this course and a little bit of money, I was lucky that I didn't put a ton of money into it, but I had also taken my attention away from my private client work and bringing in more private client work. So I thought that I could easily go from, and kind of like the choice I made from going from the museum to the copywriter world, I thought, okay, I can easily jump from serving private clients to having this online course. And the truth is that did not happen. So not only did I have a course that in my belief, it was a flop, like it just didn't take off the way I thought it would, but I also had kind of turned away a lot of private client work. So that was really rough for me. And I had to kind of, with my tail between my legs, go back to the private client work, even though I shouldn't have made a big deal of it. It's something that I love, love, love to do. I love getting other people results. And I think maybe that was the hardest part for me to acknowledge, is that I can help other people launch these amazing courses, but it's because they have the brand recognition that they need to have the kind of success they would. So, yeah, I had to reconcile all of that. I had to look back and say, okay, what is the lesson that I can get from this? Don't walk away from my private client work, because that is the bread and butter of my business. It's okay for me now to launch courses, but I don't launch them at that price point anymore, because I'm realizing that I'm still up and coming. As much as, all of that work I had done with the clients gives me the experience I need to teach other people, it doesn't mean that they necessarily know that. I have to build that bridge for them, and they're not going to know it until they've invested a little bit with me. And then we can go on to do bigger projects together. But I realized I had to shift my business model and focus on the private client work and not get distracted, because there are so many distractions out there of like, scale your business to this, do that, like all these marketing tricks and tactics that I see work so well. But it won't necessarily always work for you. And I recommend taking a small step into it and testing things before you get too invested in it. Because if you go to put all your eggs in one basket, that's when things can get kind of wonky and you're like, oh no, now I'm stuck in this place and I got to work my way back up.
Yeah, a lot of lessons if you're running a business, that you have to be flexible and you have to be able to pivot and make adjustments. Yeah, and then I mentioned earlier you had a big 2017. The numbers that I saw on your website is that you worked on 52 projects with 19 clients. You had your first 7-figure launch with a client, which is massive. That is huge. if we can just make a little shift, you also take opportunities to take some time off. And I think that people are often surprised with the amount of time that you're able to take off and not really suffer on your revenue.
Yeah, so that's right. 2017, I had 52 projects, 19 clients. I took 4 months off and my revenue doubled. So that doesn't make sense to a lot of people from the outside looking in, but it came out of the fact that I had just spoken on Rick's stage. I was getting a ton of interest in copywriting for people's launches. So I knew that I had a lot of clarity that the business was going to come in. Like I knew that my lead generation was taken care of. So I actually have a small team that I work with, and I talked to my project manager and I said, hey, I already know the business is coming in. So how can I leverage this and be able to take some time off? And at first I was like, because there's things that I like to do, my own projects, that I just want space for, and I don't want to be meeting with clients that week. So she actually recommended that. At first I said, okay, let me take every other Friday off or something like that. And she's like, well, instead of taking 1 day a week off every week, why don't you just take an entire week off in the month? So take 5 days off, don't do any meetings that week. And I was like, oh my goodness, that makes so much more sense than trying to figure out how I'm going to piecemeal it together. So what that worked out to be is for 1 week every month, I took off. My project manager and my junior copywriter would take care of the clients during that week, and I would have no meetings at all. And I did that every month. So that works out to be 3 months for the entire year. And then in 2017, I took August off as well, just the entire month, took it off. And again, I had a project manager in place, I had a VA in place, and I had a junior copywriter. So between the three of them, they took care of the current clients. But also, if I had a new lead come in, my VA would work on getting them set up so that we could start working together in September. So we were basically taking deposits in August, and then I would start the work in September. And that worked beautifully. It was great. So I felt like, and I told my team, I said, it's okay if, we don't close every deal while I'm gone in August. If you have somebody who comes in and they end up not signing up with us, I'm totally fine with that. And so when I took that pressure off of my team, I think it worked. Like that made it feel like, okay, it's okay. Like I don't have to be perfect while Sarah's not here. And it worked out. It was beautiful. So this year I've done the same. I take 1 week off every month, but I did it a little bit different. I took 2 weeks in November and 2 weeks in December instead of the entire month of August. So I'm getting ready for that. It's, we're coming up on the end of the year, and I wanted to make sure I give myself space to just have time to myself and hang with my family. And yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, tell me why that's important for you.
So for me, I feel like as much as growing my revenue is definitely a focus of mine, at the end of the day, what I enjoyed most when I was working at the museums, when I look back to being a freelance contractor for them, is that I did have a lot of space in between to travel when I wanted to. So now I do some traveling, but I love staycations just as much. So I want to be able to go enjoy. I live in Southern California. Like there's so much here. I love going to the beaches, to the museums, to local gardens. And so when I get to go do that, I feel like I recharge my energy, and the quality of my work is much higher when I give myself some space and I'm not always like nose up against the computer screen trying to do all the work. So yeah. And, I've even found like during launches, if I take a day away from the computer, I get the most sales that day. And I will post like on Facebook that I'm at the beach or whatever. And I think it gets people's attention that I'm a hardworking entrepreneur, but I know how to take care of myself too. And I think people in the long run, they want something, it builds that desire for them. They want that for themselves. And so it makes them want to know me more and buy the things that I offer more because they see me leading my life in that way.
Yeah, I was curious if it goes back to being a creative person, because I've read a lot of articles that talk about the need for space when it comes to creativity. Like you can't just be running all the time. Your brain doesn't tap into the creative part except when you're doing, like you have to take space and time and slow down in order to really feed that creativity.
Yeah, 100%. I think that walking away from the computer is when my best ideas come. Also, having a night's rest in between projects. So, like, if I'm working on a really big launch and we've got, Facebook ads and sales emails and sales pages and all these different components, there's a lot of moving parts. And I found if I write a draft of something and then I go to bed and I sleep for a night, the next morning I'll get like a really good idea on a way to edit something to make it more attention grabbing or whatever it is. So I feel like taking time for yourself to go places and do things that you enjoy will allow for more creativity. But B, also rest in between or coming to things with fresh eyes, giving yourself a break for a few hours. It really does make a difference. Like going out and walking around the block. I get so many ideas just from body movement. So I recommend it for sure.
And I wasn't sure to what extent you want to talk about having an online business as a tool.
Yeah, so I feel like in terms of digital marketing, that connecting women with the tools of having an online business is really where we're headed. So when you look at the distribution of wealth across the world, it is unequal. And I think that for women to be able to use the online business to fit the flexibility of their life, then that makes all the difference in being able to know and be empowered that you can start a business from your home. You don't have to give up all of the other things as well. Like if you want to have a family and a business, but you don't want to, for me, like having my family home with me during the day is amazing. I love it. And so I wouldn't give that up for sure. Like for women to have the flexibility to run a business and be able to travel. I feel like one of the things that happens when you see other parts of the world, it gives you a different perspective and it gives you the opportunity to find more role models and leaders and other women who are doing amazing things and still running a very profitable business. But the one thing that I've noticed for me is that when I worked for the museum world, I made $30,000. I think my ending salary was $36,000 for the year. And if I had stayed, let's just say I had stayed at the California Science Center for another 5 years, my salary probably would have capped out at about maybe $50,000 if I was lucky and played my cards right and went into management, which is, the only way for my salary to go up there. However, I left the museum world in 2010 and I crossed the 6-figure mark in my business by 2017. So that jump in income is a huge lifestyle change, not just for me, but the people around me. And that's the one thing when I go on like the United Nations website, I see is that when you give women the potential to earn more, they don't just spend it on themselves. They spend it on their family members and their community. So I can give you like 5 women that I've worked with this last year who one woman was making money to pay her son's medical tuition for his college. Another woman is saving for the college fund for her daughter who's not even a teenager yet, but she already knows she needs to get ready for that. Another woman wanted the flexibility to have a child and keep that child home with her. Another client of mine just had her baby and she's able to work from home because of her online business. Like these are the things women do with the higher earning when they get there. So I think connecting women with digital marketing is really where economy is going, and it's going to be amazing to see the difference that it makes in communities because they have that potential to earn more.
I love that it's very powerful. And then the multiplier effect, because it involves family and community. Since it's something that you have had success with, do you have any advice for somebody who is considering taking the leap, but they're not sure if they should do it or shouldn't do it, or they don't know that they have the know-how or like tech expertise to do it?
Yeah. So first of all, don't do what I did. Don't just dive into it. I mean, I tested a few things in terms of writing, but I would say if you have a full-time job, here's what I would have done differently. I would have kept my full-time job and I would have slowly built up the business more in the background. Because for me to quit suddenly and just decide to put my 2 weeks in, I basically gave myself 2 weeks to get ready to fully run this copywriting business. So I would say, don't do it that way. Start, as a sole proprietor, start just taking clients on the side and slowly build up that side of business so that the biggest thing that I would have invested in differently is instead of putting my money into a course or putting my money into hiring a bunch of coaches, I would have hired somebody to build my systems for me. So my VA that works with me now, I would have invested more in that and making sure that I had a consistent way to generate leads in my business. That's the thing that I would focus on first. Then once you build that, you can look at other revenue streams. But if I had gone back, I would have done things a little bit differently. And I'm not saying that you can't take the leap and have success. You can, but I feel like if you can gradually work your way up to it, it'll just be a little less heart-wrenching when you go to build your business. I kind of took the leap and was like, oh, I'll just build my wings on the way down.
Yeah, there are a couple of ways of doing that. But thank you for sharing that piece of advice. I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
Success to me is really just continuing to move forward and not letting go of what you've created. Because I think that there are times in your business where you're going to question what you're doing. And if you hold on tight to your vision, for me, it's helping women to move past the pay equity conversation. As long as I have that vision to hold on to, no matter where I'm at in my business growth or having some setbacks, when I remember that I'm here to help these other women and lift them up with me, I just keep showing up for my business. And that's really what it's about. Just keep showing up.
Thank you for sharing your business, your story, your mission, and your vision. Can you tell the Inspired Money listener where they can find more about your services and follow you online?
Yeah. So for anybody listening who wants to keep the conversation going, I have a free gift for your audience. And if they go to sarahgrear.com/inspired money. So my name is SarahGrear. So sarahgrear.com/inspired money. And what they'll find is a copy guide. So if you're just getting started in business and you want to do more online writing, this is a great way to get started. It will walk you through 8 powerful questions that will help you write your own copy for your website. And if you've been in business a while, you're going to love this because it will reignite your passion for why you started your business in the first place. So I'm super excited for your audience to grab that. And thank you, Andy, for this opportunity. It's been such a pleasure to be able to share what I know with your audience.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your time. I know that I have some homework to do. And yeah, thanks so much, Sarah.
I appreciate you, Andy. Have a beautiful day.
All right, so first things first, before we get to anything, first go get your free gift at sarahgrear.com/inspired money. That's Sarah with an H, GREAR.com/inspired money. Go download her copy guide for writing better copy for your website. So what was your favorite inspired money moment? I like Sarah's story selling framework, storytelling, emotion, and action. We know how powerful stories can be from reading books or movies on the big screen, so it makes sense to try to incorporate some of those tools, used in story to engage with people reading our website or social media posts. I also love how she views online entrepreneurship as a way to empower and increase incomes for women. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment and takeaway, let me know by going to inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. Let's continue the conversation there. Thank you so much for listening. A shout out to all of you who registered for Chris Hogan's Everyday Millionaire book giveaway. Congrats to Wyman, our winner. In completely unrelated news, I found an old New York Post article and shared it in the Inspired Moneymakers Facebook and LinkedIn groups. It's about a money laundering bust in Westboro, Mass. A couple years ago, there was a photo of $20 million. If you've ever wondered or just want to see what $20 million in cash hidden in a mattress looks like, go check it out. I appreciate you joining me and being a part of this mission to make our money more inspired. The music you're listening to right now and all other music on today's show is by the amazing Jim Kimo West. Aloha, Kimo. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.